2 cups were still warm when I found her room empty. Her bed had been stripped, the balance rail folded against the wall, and the chair she had always kept near the doorway was gone. A nurse handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in careful block letters. Inside, Mara had written only 6 lines. The 4th one made my knees weaken. 8 years ago, I was the anonymous marrow donor who saved your sister Sophie. The 5th was worse. Please do not come looking for me because you think you owe me. The last line said, come Friday because you want to know who I am when I am not saving anyone. Before I tell you what I did on Friday, let me know where you are listening from and subscribe if you believe the smallest kindness can change more than one life. My name is Daniel Whitaker. I was 31, an architectural photographer in Louisville, Kentucky, and I had built a career around noticing what other people walked past. Cracked plaster, warped doors, hand-carved stone, hidden beneath decades of soot. 2 years earlier, my fiancé had ended our engagement after telling me that I treated every relationship like a building inspection, always searching for damage, never trusting anything to stand on its own. I had told myself she was unfair. By the time I landed in St. Anne Medical Center with 3 broken bones in my right hand, I had begun to suspect she was right. I lived alone, worked too much, and knew exactly how to frame an empty room so it looked intentional. 3 days before the note, I had been photographing the interior of the old Bellwether Theater when a rotted section of balcony railing gave way. I caught myself before I fell to the orchestra floor, but my right hand took the full force against an iron support. Surgery repaired the fractures and a torn tendon. The surgeon promised I would probably regain full use if I followed instructions, which would have been comforting if my entire livelihood had not depended on the hand wrapped in white bandages and elevated beside me. My room was 417. The woman across the hall was in 418. I noticed her because her door never closed all the way. Through the narrow opening, I could see a thin woman with dark curls gathered loosely at the back of her head. A strip of white tape crossed the skin behind her left ear. She moved carefully as if the room tilted when no one else could feel it. Sometimes a therapist walked beside her while she followed a line of blue tape on the floor. Other times, she sat absolutely still, one palm pressed against the mattress, waiting for the walls to settle. No one visited. My sister Sophie came every afternoon with our mother and enough food to feed the entire neurology floor. My business partner, Marcus, brought contracts I could not sign. 2 contractors from the theater arrived with apologies and a basket containing 3 kinds of fruit I did not like. Across the hall, the visitor chair remained empty. On my 2nd morning, I shuffled to the family lounge because my surgeon wanted me walking and because I could not bear another cup of hospital tea. A machine near the window offered coffee under the optimistic label Premium Roast. I bought one, tasted it, and considered filing a complaint with the state. When I stepped back into the corridor, the woman in 418 looked at the cup. She did not stare. It was a quick glance, almost embarrassed. But I had spent 10 years photographing details people thought they had hidden. I continued to my room, set the coffee down, then returned to the machine and bought another. A nurse named Tasha raised an eyebrow when she saw me carrying it. Trying to increase your heart rate? She asked. Is the woman in 418 allowed coffee? Tasha glanced toward the room. Mara? Decaf only for now. She had surgery near the balance and hearing nerves. Caffeine can make the dizziness worse. Does the machine have decaf? It claims it does. That is not reassuring. Neither is the regular. I pressed the decaf button, waited for the cup to fill, and crossed the hall. Mara looked up from a tablet balanced on her knees. Her left eye blinked a fraction slower than her right, and the corner of her mouth did not rise evenly when she spoke. You are in the wrong room, she said. I brought you this. Her gaze moved from the cup to my bandaged hand. Why? Because you looked at mine like it had personally disappointed you. I looked at it for 1 second. I notice brief things for a living. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes sharpened with interest. I do not need charity, she said. Good, this is not valuable enough to qualify. I am serious. So am I. The nurse said you can only have decaf, and the machine may have produced hot brown water instead. I thought you deserved the chance to decide. Mara studied me for a long moment. Did the nurse also tell you my name? She did. And my medical history? Only enough to prevent me from accidentally making you dizzy. I'm already dizzy. Then the coffee has nothing to lose. That nearly made her smile. I saw the beginning of it before she remembered to guard her face. She reached for the cup. Thank you. You should wait a minute. It is very hot. Is that the only good thing about it? So far? I turned to leave. Daniel, she said. I looked back. I had not introduced myself, but my name was printed on the board outside my door. If this tastes terrible, I am holding you responsible. I am already being blamed for a historic theater railing. I can carry one more failure. This time the smile arrived. It was uneven, brief, and so unprotected that I felt as if I'd been trusted with something. I returned to my room and watched through the open doors as Mara lifted the cup. She took one, closed her eyes, and grimaced. I laughed. She opened her eyes and called across the hall, "This is awful." "You are welcome." The next morning, the chair in her room had been moved closer to the door. I arrived with 2 cups from a cafe in the lobby, 1 regular and 1 decaf. Mara pointed toward the chair. "You may sit," she said, "but only because I want to know whether you paid actual money for this. $7.40. That is more upsetting than the surgery." I lowered myself into the chair. "You can reimburse me when you regain your balance. I may choose permanent dizziness." For the first 10 minutes, we talked about safe subjects. The hospital television had 12 sports channels and no program worth watching. The soup was too salty. The clock near the nurse's station ran 6 minutes fast, which Mara insisted was a form of psychological warfare. Then she asked what had happened to my hand. I told her about the bellwether theater, the broken railing, and the camera that had survived because I had dropped it onto a velvet seat before grabbing the iron support. "You saved the camera before yourself?" she asked. "I saved it accidentally." That sounds like something a photographer would say under oath. "What do you do?" "I produce audio documentaries for public radio." I glanced at the tape behind her ear before I could stop myself. Mara noticed. "Yes," she said. "The irony has already introduced itself." "What did the surgeon say?" "That the tumor was benign, that he removed all of it, that the facial nerve is bruised, not severed, that my balance should improve. And your hearing?" Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "My left ear is probably not coming back." I waited because there are moments when comfort becomes another form of interruption. She looked toward the window. "I spent 9 years learning how to hear what other people miss. Breath before a lie. A train in the distance. The difference between an empty room and a room where someone is trying not to move. Now everything on one side sounds as if it has been erased. I am sorry." "There," she said. "That is the correct use of pity." It was not pity. What was it? Recognition. She turned back to me. I lifted my bandaged hand. "My surgeon says I will probably be able to hold a camera again." I heard the word "probably" more clearly than everything else. For the first time, Mara stopped treating me like a well-meaning stranger who might become exhausting. She looked at me like someone standing on the same unstable floor. "What kind of buildings do you photograph?" she asked. "The ones people are about to change or destroy, old factories, theaters, houses before restoration. I try to record what is there before someone decides it was never important." Mara traced one finger around the rim of her cup. "I record voices for the same reason." That was how the chair moved from the doorway to the side of her bed. Over the next 2 days, our rooms became one conversation separated by 12 feet of corridor. Mara learned that I hated raisins, that I had once driven 4 hours to photograph a courthouse scheduled for demolition, and that my sister Sophie sent me a voice message every morning even though she lived 15 minutes away. I learned that Mara collected recordings of thunderstorms, could imitate the polished voice of every station manager she had ever worked for, and had moved to Louisville 6 months earlier for a job producing a series about neighborhoods divided by highway construction. Whenever someone approached from her left, she startled. Whenever she stood, the floor seemed to pull her sideways. She hated the walker her therapist brought because it made her feel 80 years old. You are 27, I said. That gives you 53 years to become emotionally prepared for it. She stared at me. How do you know my age? It was on the birthday card your coworker mailed. That card is face down. I am observant. You are nosy with professional equipment. I do not currently have professional equipment. Then you are just nosy. I was 31, exactly 4 years older, a fact she declared statistically uninteresting after asking my age 2 conversations later. A colleague named Hannah called twice, but Mara let both calls go to voicemail. She said Hannah would hear one uneven syllable and arrive with casseroles and a plan to reorganize her life. Your family seems close, Mara said. We are now. The answer changed something in her face. What does that mean? I almost gave her the simple version. Instead, I told the truth. When Sophie was 14, she developed acute myeloid leukemia. Our father had died the year before, and my mother was still trying to understand how to be one person in a house built for 4. I was 23 and thought being the oldest meant I should know what to do. I quit a good internship, moved home, and turned the dining room into a command center of medication schedules, donor drives, insurance calls, and foods Sophie might tolerate. Mara did not interrupt. Chemotherapy got her into remission, but she needed a stem cell transplant. None of us matched. The registry found a 19-year-old donor somewhere in the United States. We never met her. She gave Sophie marrow, and Sophie got another life. The color drained from Mara's face so quickly that I leaned forward. Are you all right? She set her cup down with both hands, just dizzy. Should I call Tasha? No. Her answer came too fast. Then she closed her eyes and breathed slowly. No. It happens when I turn my head. I had not seen her turn her head, but I did not argue. After a minute, she opened her eyes. Your sister is well? She is 22, finishing nursing school, and more opinionated than most elected officials. Did you ever contact the donor? The registry allowed letters. We sent several through the program. After 2 years, both sides could agree to exchange names. We agreed. The donor did not. Were you angry? No. Sophie was alive. The donor had already given enough. Mara looked down at her hands. What? I asked. Nothing. You are a poor liar. I work in audio. Silence is part of the craft. That was not silence. That was an edited answer. She looked at me then, one side of her face still slower than the other. Some stories are not ready to be broadcast. I understood the boundary and let it stand. That afternoon, Sophie visited. She entered carrying a paper bag from a bakery and stopped when she saw me in Mara's room. There you are, she said. Mom thinks you were abducted by radiology. I left a note. You wrote across hall. That is not a note. It is a geographic clue. Mara laughed, then pressed her lips together as if the sound had escaped without permission. I introduced them. Sophie shifted the bag to her other hand and smiled. I brought my brother a cinnamon roll he cannot open with one hand. He plans poorly, Mara said. I've been telling him that for years. Sophie offered Mara half. Mara hesitated before accepting. For 15 minutes, Sophie filled the room with ordinary noise. A pharmacology exam, our mother's latest battle with online banking, and my refusal to replace a broken lamp. Mara watched her with an attention that was almost painful to see. When Sophie mentioned her May graduation, Mara said, You must be excited. Terrified, Sophie answered. But Daniel says fear is planning without a spreadsheet. I have never said that. You say worse things. Mara's eyes shone. She turned toward the window before Sophie could notice. After my sister left, Mara became quieter. You like her, I said. She is difficult not to like. She works at it. Does she remember being sick? Too much of it. And the donor? She remembers a bag of cells hanging beside her bed, and my mother crying because it looked too small to contain a future. Mara pressed her thumb against the cardboard sleeve around her cup until it bent. The next morning, my surgeon told me I could be discharged after lunch. The bones were stable. The tendon repair looked good. I would need occupational therapy 3 times a week, no lifting, no driving, and no camera work until he approved it. I should have been relieved. Instead, I stared across the hall while Mara practiced walking with her therapist. Her left hand gripped the rail. Her right foot crossed the blue tape line, then corrected. She took 6 slow steps, stopped, and whispered something I could not hear. The therapist answered, "You are not failing. Your brain is learning a new map." Mara's eyes closed. She stood still until the spinning passed. When she returned to her bed, I carried in the last 2 coffees I expected to buy as a patient. "I am leaving today," I said. She nodded once. "That is good." "It is." "You should sound more convinced." "I am happy to go home." "But," I sat beside her, "but I would like to come back tomorrow." Mara looked at the cup in her hands. "You will have therapy. Work. People who are not attached to machines. I have always had those things, and you have known me for 3 days. 4. That does not strengthen your argument." "I am not making an argument." "What are you making?" "A plan. Tomorrow at 10, better coffee." She gave me a small, uncertain smile. "You do like plans. So do you. You produce documentaries. I produce chaos and call it a schedule." 10? Mara glanced toward the blue line on the floor. 10. At 2:30, my mother drove me home. At 3, she rearranged my kitchen so I could reach everything with my left hand. At 4, Sophie taped a plastic bag over my cast so I could shower. At 6, Marcus brought my laptop and firmly refused to bring my cameras. At 9, Mara sent a message from a number I did not recognize. "Do not forget decaf." I answered. "I thought you did not need anyone." Her reply came a minute later. "Coffee is not anyone." The following morning, Sophie drove me to St. Anne. I bought 1 regular and 1 decaf from a cafe 2 blocks away because I refused to let the lobby charge me $7 again. Room 418 was empty. The bed had been stripped. The blue tape was gone. So was Mara's tablet, the small overnight bag under her chair, and the gray sweater she kept folded near the window. For one irrational second, I thought I had the wrong floor. Then Tasha stepped from the nurse's station. She was transferred early, she said. The rehabilitation unit had an opening. She knew I was coming. She did. Tasha handed me the envelope. I read the note once, then again. "Daniel, 8 years ago I joined the marrow registry because the woman who raised me died of leukemia, and I needed to believe loss did not get the final word every time. 3 months later, I matched with a 14-year-old girl named Sophie Whitaker. I recognized your last name before you brought the first coffee. Yesterday, I recognized Sophie. I did not tell you because I was afraid gratitude would enter the room and push everything else out. Please do not come looking for me because you think you owe me. Come Friday at 11 because you want to know who I am when I am not saving anyone. Riverside Rehabilitation Center, West Garden, Mara." Below her name, she had added 1 final sentence. "Bring the terrible decaf. I need proof that some things can survive honesty." I lowered the paper. Tasha watched me without pretending not to. "Did you know?" I asked. "Not until this morning." "Did she say why she left before I arrived?" "She said if she watched you walk through the door, she might tell you everything before she was ready to hear your answer." "What answer?" Tasha looked at the 2 cups in my hands. "Whether you were coming back for the donor or the woman." Friday was 2 days away. I had spent most of my adult life believing action was the cure for uncertainty. Make the call, repair the damage, find the missing document, drive to the place, ask the question. For 48 hours, Mara had given me nothing to do but decide why I wanted to see her. On Friday morning, I almost asked Sophie to drive me. Then I remembered Mara's fear that gratitude would fill every available space, so I called a car instead and told my family only that I had an appointment. I carried 2 coffees into the West Garden at Riverside Rehabilitation Center at 10:57. Mara sat beneath a bare maple tree wearing dark trousers, a green coat, and a small hearing device clipped near her right ear. A cane rested beside her. She had pinned her curls away from the surgical incision, and the left side of her smile still moved more slowly, but she looked less like a patient than she had in the hospital. She looked at the cups. "You came. You invited me. People ignore invitations every day. I am unusually obedient when threatened with bad coffee." I set the decaf in front of her and took the chair across from her. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "Thank you." Mara's shoulders tightened. For the note, I added. Not as payment for Sophie. She looked down at the lid of her cup. You can thank me for that too. I am not allergic to the words. I have 8 years of things I could say. That is what frightens me. I nodded. Then I will say one thing. My sister is alive. I know what your choice meant. I will never pretend it meant less so you can feel comfortable. Mara's eyes filled, but she held my gaze. And I continued, I came. Because you know the hallway clock is wrong. Because you insult coffee with precision. And because I spent 2 days wanting to hear what you would say next. The donor is part of you. She is not the only part I came to see. Mara let out a breath that shook at the end. I practiced 3 speeches, she said. Were any of them good? One was excellent. Very cold. You would have felt guilty for weeks. I am disappointed you changed it. I might use it later. She told me the story slowly. The woman who raised her was named Evelyn Ellison. She had been Mara's foster mother from the time Mara was 12 and had adopted her at 16. Evelyn taught music at a public elementary school, drove an unreliable blue station wagon and believed every difficult conversation improved when accompanied by toast. When Mara was 19, Evelyn died after a second battle with leukemia. I joined the registry at a memorial drive, Mara said. I thought nothing would happen. Then they called 3 months later and said I might match a girl in Kentucky. She had donated marrow under anesthesia. The procedure left her sore for several days. She went back to college the following week and told almost no one. Your family sent letters through the registry, she said. Your mother wrote about Sophie's appetite returning. Sophie drew a cartoon of a superhero carrying a bag of cells. You sent photographs. I stared at her. Sun rises. 1 every month for a year. I remembered taking them from the roof of my mother's house, from hospital parking garages, from the shoulder of highways when I was traveling for work. On the back of each photograph, I had written the date and 1 sentence about Sophie. You kept them, I asked? All 12. Why did you refuse direct contact? Mara looked toward the rehabilitation building. Because Evelyn had been gone less than a year. Everyone kept telling me I had done something beautiful, but I had not saved the person I wanted to save. I was afraid meeting Sophie would make me responsible for what happened next. Her birthdays, her bad days, whether she became the kind of person who deserved a second life, that was never your responsibility. I know that now. Why tell me? She gave a humorless laugh. Because you walked into my room with coffee and then described your sister as if she were weather after a storm. I realized I had spent 8 years protecting myself from a family that had never asked me for anything. A therapist came to remind Mara of an afternoon session. Before leaving, she asked whether I would return Sunday. No terrible coffee, she added. That part of our relationship has completed its purpose. Our relationship? She narrowed her eyes. Do not make me edit the sentence. I will be here Sunday. The next 3 weeks taught us how easily 2 people could become important while insisting nothing had been defined. I visited Riverside after my hand therapy. Sometimes we sat in the garden. Sometimes Mara let me watch her balance exercises, though she threatened to strike me with the cane if I used the word inspiring. My hand improved by degrees too small to impress anyone but my therapist. I learned to close 2 fingers around a foam cylinder. I learned to rotate my wrist without protecting it. The first time I lifted an empty camera body, my hand trembled so violently that I set it down before Mara could see. She saw. You do not have to hide the bad part, she said. I am not hiding it. You placed the camera behind your coat? That was storage. Daniel. I sat beside her on the garden bench. I am afraid my eye will still know what to do, and my hand will not. Mara looked toward the fountain. I'm afraid my ear will change the way I make every decision. Where I sit, which street I cross, whether I hear someone say my name. Do you? Do I what? Hear me say your name. She turned until her right ear faced me. Say it. Mara. Her expression softened. Yes? She was discharged from Riverside in early March. Hannah, the colleague she had been avoiding, arrived in a red coat and cried before reaching the reception desk. Mara tolerated 1 casserole, 2 hugs, and a lecture about unanswered phone calls. I did not offer to manage her apartment. I carried one box, placed it where she asked, and left before helpfulness became occupation. 2 days later, she invited me back. Her apartment overlooked the Ohio River. Microphones, headphones, and coils of cable filled one wall of the living room. The opposite wall held framed sheet music that had belonged to Evelyn. On the coffee table sat a wooden box containing the 12 sunrise photographs I'd mailed years earlier. I lifted the first one. I was terrible. You were 23. I had been using a camera for 9 years. The notes were better than the photographs. On the back, my younger handwriting said, Sophie ate half a grilled cheese sandwich today and complained it was burned. Normal life has never looked so beautiful. Mara watched me read it. I hated that sentence, she said. Why? Because I wanted normal life with Evelyn. I put the photograph down. And now I think grief made me treat every other person's survival like an accusation. That is a hard thing to admit. So is hiding a camera behind a coat. I smiled. You keep evidence. It is my job. That evening, she played me the first audio piece she had edited since surgery. It was a 2-minute recording of the rehabilitation garden, fountain water, distant traffic, a therapist counting, a cane tapping stone. The sound shifted unnaturally from right to center, then opened into a full field through careful layering. I built the left side from memory and reference recordings, she said. It is not what I heard. It is what I wanted the listener to hear. That is what every photograph is. Mara looked at me. The room became very quiet. I could have kissed her. I wanted to. But gratitude, history, injury, and 3 weeks of unspoken fear stood between us like furniture in a dark room. Instead, I asked, Are you ready to meet Sophie knowing who she is? Mara's eyes moved to the wooden box. I think so, she said. But no surprise, no speeches. No one calling me an angel. Sophie has never called anyone an angel in her life. Your mother? More dangerous. Mara smiled nervously. Then start with Sophie. We met her the following Saturday at a quiet cafe near Cherokee Park. Sophie arrived alone, as instructed, carrying no gift. For one long moment, she and Mara simply looked at each other. Then Sophie said, I had a speech, but Daniel told me speeches were forbidden. They are, Mara said. Good, mine was bad. Mara's laugh broke the tension. Sophie sat down. Can I hug you? Mara nodded. The hug lasted only a few seconds. When they separated, both women were crying. Sophie wiped her face. I am not going to tell you everything I have done with the extra years. That seems like a lot to put on coffee. Thank you, Mara whispered. But I would like to tell you ordinary things eventually. I hate running. I failed organic chemistry once. I am graduating in May. I make excellent soup and terrible financial decisions. Mara smiled through tears. Ordinary sounds good. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Not about cancer after the first 10 minutes. Sophie asked about audio work. Mara asked about nursing school. They discovered a mutual dislike of inspirational wall art. When Sophie left, she hugged Mara again and said, You do not owe us a relationship. But there is a place for you if you want one. Mara watched her walk toward the parking lot. You taught her that, she said. No, cancer did. I only took notes. She turned toward me. Why did you really send those sunrises? Because the donor was a stranger, and I needed her to know there was a person on the other side of the paperwork. And now? Now I know there is a woman who drinks decaf, edits rainstorms, and pretends she does not need help carrying groceries. I can carry groceries. You nearly fell into the oranges last week. The floor was uneven. It was a supermarket. Mara stepped closer. You are avoiding the question. What question? Why are you still here? I looked at her face, at the smile that no longer apologized for being uneven. Because when I leave, I look for reasons to come back. She kissed me before I could say anything wiser. The kiss was gentle, uncertain for half a second, then certain enough to silence every explanation I had prepared. When we separated, Mara rested her forehead against mine. That was not gratitude, she said. No. Good. Then she kissed me again. For 6 weeks, we built something careful and ordinary. We ate Thursday dinners at Mara's apartment. She came to my hand therapy once and applauded when I fastened 3 buttons, which made me threaten to leave. I accompanied her to the radio station on her first day back. She chose the desk position that kept her right ear toward the room. tested new monitoring software, and worked 4 hours before admitting she was exhausted. I began photographing again with a lightweight camera. Mara produced a short audio track to accompany my images of the bellwether restoration. Our collaboration was accepted for a spring exhibition at the Hospital Foundation Gallery. That was where I made the mistake that nearly ended us. My mother learned about Mara 2 weeks after Sophie met her. I told her the truth because keeping it secret felt wrong. Mara agreed to meet her privately, but she made one request. No public donor story, my mother promised. At first, she kept the promise. She invited Mara to dinner, asked before hugging her, and spoke more about gardening than leukemia. Then the Hospital Foundation director saw Mara's name on the audio credit. My mother, proud and emotional, explained the connection. By the night of our exhibition, a printed sign beside our work read, "Art born from a miracle. Recipient's brother reunited with life-saving donor." Mara saw it before I did. A local television reporter was already walking toward us. "Miss Ellison," he said, "could we get a photograph of you with the Whitaker family?" Mara went still. I should have removed the sign, blocked the camera, and taken her outside. Instead, for 3 disastrous seconds, I tried to understand who had approved it. 3 seconds was enough. Mara turned to me. "You knew?" "No, but you told them," I told my mother, "after I asked you not to make this public." I thought she understood. "You thought." The reporter raised his microphone. I stepped between them. "There will be no interview." But Mara had already taken her coat. I followed her into the rain. "Mara, wait." She turned, unsteady on the wet pavement. "Do you know what that sign did? It erased my work. It erased your photographs. It made every hour we spent together evidence in a story about what I gave your family. I will have it removed." "You cannot remove the question I have been asking from the beginning." "Which question?" "Whether you see me or whether you see the person who saved Sophie. I see you." "Then why did you give my story away?" I had no answer that did not sound like an excuse. Mara took a car home. She did not answer my calls that night. The next morning, she sent one message. "I need space where gratitude cannot reach me." I respected the request, though every instinct told me to repair the damage immediately. I withdrew our work from the exhibition. I asked the foundation to destroy the sign and cancel all publicity. My mother apologized to Mara in writing without asking for forgiveness. Then I wrote my own note. "Mara, you trusted me with a boundary, and I treated good intentions as if they were permission. They were not. I told myself I was protecting your privacy because I did not speak to the press, but I had already passed your story to someone who loved us both and could not keep her pride quiet. I am not coming to your door. I am not asking you to make me feel better. The donor saved Sophie. The woman taught me how to listen, how to admit fear, and how to stop confusing usefulness with love. I know the difference. I am sorry I failed to protect it. Daniel." I left the note with Hannah and returned to the Bellwether Theater. For the next month, I photographed workers rebuilding the balcony rail. My hand ached. Some images blurred. I kept them instead of deleting every imperfect frame. Mara did not call. Then, on a Tuesday morning, an envelope appeared beneath my apartment door. Inside was a card with an address and 6 words. Thursday, 10 o'clock. Bring 1 coffee. The address belonged to the public radio studio. Mara waited in an editing booth. Between us, a computer screen displayed a new audio project titled Room Tone. "I used your note," she said, "not your words." The silence after I read it. I sat across from her. "Are you going to broadcast this? Only if I choose to?" "Good." She studied me. "You withdrew the exhibition." "Yes." That mattered. It was the minimum. I was angry because you broke my trust. I was also angry because the sign said something I feared might be true. "What?" "That without the donation, donation, there would be no reason for you to love me. I moved closer but did not touch her. Mara, without the donation, we might never have met. That is not the same as it being the reason I stayed. I love the woman who argues with microphones, forgets food when she edits, sits on the right side of every room, and still turns toward people when hearing them is difficult. I love you. Not the debt, not the miracle. You. Tears filled her eyes. I love you too, she said, and I do not want fear to decide what parts of my life can be spoken. She pressed play. The piece began with hospital room tone. Ventilation, distant wheels, a coffee lid snapping into place. Then came Mara's voice, calm and unmistakably her own. People like to tell stories about rescue because rescue has a clean ending. Recovery does not. Love does not. Sometimes the person who once saved a stranger must learn how to be seen without saving anyone at all. When the recording ended, I asked, "What happens now?" Mara took the coffee from my hand and tasted it. "You remember decaf? I remember important things. Now we try again, with rules. I like rules, I know. Rule 1. My story belongs to me. Agreed. Rule 2. Neither of us gets to disappear when we are frightened. Agreed. Rule 3. Hospital coffee is forbidden. That may be difficult at fundraisers." She smiled. "Then bring your own." I kissed her in the quiet editing booth, and this time the kiss was not an ending. It was a decision with consequences we had agreed to carry. Mara broadcast Room Tone that summer under her own name and on her own terms. The response was larger than she expected, not because listeners knew she had donated marrow, but because they recognized the fear of being reduced to one generous act, one injury, or one mistake. She returned to full-time production using adaptive equipment and began mentoring young audio journalists with hearing differences. The station later asked whether she wanted to produce a series about medical donors. This time, no one assumed the answer. Mara spent a week deciding, then proposed a different series about consent. Who gets to tell a patient's story, how families confuse pride with permission, and why gratitude can become pressure when it is performed in public. She interviewed nurses, recipients, donors, and one mother who admitted on tape that love had made her careless with someone else's privacy. My mother agreed to be that voice only after Mara approved every question. When the episode aired, they listened together at our kitchen table. Nothing was magically repaired, but trust stopped being a promise and became a habit. My hand never regained exactly the same strength, but it learned a new grip. I returned to architectural work and stopped deleting every image that showed movement. Some structures I discovered looked more truthful when the frame admitted a human hand had been there. Mara and I kept working together after Room Tone. She taught me to record the low, almost invisible sound beneath speech. Vents breathing, wheels crossing linoleum, rain tapping different windows. I brought her new photographs from the Bellwether Theater, and she described what each image sounded like in her imagination. One restored staircase, she announced, was in D minor. I told her buildings did not make musical claims. She told me photographers who waited in condemned rooms had no right to object to imagination. Our second gallery project listed us simply as two artists. The description mentioned neither cancer nor donation. Visitors stood between the images and the sound, free to decide what the work meant without being told which one of us had once saved someone. My mother earned Mara's trust again slowly. No surprise dinners, no public stories. Sophie graduated, became a pediatric oncology nurse, and kept her promise to offer Mara ordinary things: soup, bad financial advice, and arguments about television. 9 months after the first coffee, Mara moved into my apartment. Not because she needed help, and not because I asked her to become part of a debt. She said my rooms had better morning light and terrible acoustics. We installed sound panels in her office and built shelves low enough for both of us to reach without pretending convenience was weakness. On the anniversary of Sophie's transplant, we returned to St. Anne with coffee for the nurses. We did not call a reporter. We did not pose beside a banner. Mara sat in the family lounge while I bought 2 cups from the old machine for ceremonial purposes. She tasted hers and made the same uneven grimace I had first seen across the hall. "Still terrible," she said. "Some things survive honesty." I reached into my pocket and handed her a folded note. Inside, I had written, "You saved my sister before I knew your name. You changed my life after I learned it. Those are 2 different gifts, and I will never confuse them again." Mara read it, then placed another folded note in my hand. Hers said, "I once asked you to come because you wanted to know me when I was not saving anyone. You stayed long enough to teach me I never had to earn the empty chair beside you." I looked across the corridor at room 418. A man sat beside the bed holding his wife's hand. The chair was no longer empty, neither was the space beside me. Mara lifted her cup. "Tomorrow morning? 2 coffees?" "Always 2. The first cup I brought her was an act of kindness." The note made me believe our lives had been connected by a miracle. But love arrived later, in boundaries respected, apologies without excuses, ordinary dinners, difficult honesty, and the choice to return after gratitude was no longer enough. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to know that being loved is not a debt, and that the right person will keep coming back for who you are, not only for what you have given.